Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Casual Cinecast powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
And my name is Justin.
Today we're going to interview David Franklin, who directed As Far as the Eye Can See.
Yeah, As Far as the Eye Can See, it's an indie film that I ran into on the film festival circuit while I was taking my film around. I was actually in 2 different film festivals with him. It's what I would call like a lighthearted drama. I guess a dramedy in some ways, but there's not too much comedy. What I really like about the film is there's not a lot of melodrama.
Yeah, it's really a slice of life film.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very, very beautifully shot is one thing that I really love about
gorgeous.
It. Yeah, so I met David on these film festivals, and he's a great guy and a really interesting guy to talk to, and I thought it would be fun to have him on the show to interview him about his film and hear what he has to say about filmmaking and shooting a film in Texas in the summer.
Yeah, we hope that you guys enjoy this conversation as much as we did.
Okay, so without any further ado, let's get to the interview. Okay, so we have with us the director of the film As Far as the Eye Can See. His name is David Franklin.
Hi.
Hello. Good to have you with us.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Yeah, so I will just say how I came in contact with your movie is that I had a film in a film festival. It was the Lone Star Film Festival in Fort Worth, Texas, where I was premiering my film. And of course, we met you there and went and saw your film there. And we also ran into each other again by chance at another film festival. I guess it was about 6, 7 months later.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so we knew each other rather and didn't know other people, so we got to hang out a lot at that film festival, which was very fun.
It was fun. Yeah. I remember barbecue. That's my memory of that.
Yeah, that is still to this day the best barbecue I've ever had. And I was in Austin, which the film festival was just outside of Austin, the other weekend, maybe 2 weekends ago, and I was trying to convince everyone to drive the hour and 15-minute drive to that barbecue place. I was like, it's so worth it. We got to go.
What place is this?
It's called Cooper's.
It was Cooper's in Lano, Texas, I believe.
So I guess I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, David.
Sure. So I'm David Franklin, and I directed and produced and edited As Far as the Eye Can See, which I made with Peyton Follis, who is the screenwriter and producer of the film. So when we were hanging out and eating barbecue, Peyton was there as well. And yeah, I'm excited to talk with you guys about the film.
Yeah, us too. I think I watched it last night.
Yeah, I watched it last night as well.
And I just want to say one thing that the movie is so beautiful. To look at is amazing. And there's part of me that I know that I could just throw that movie on with no audio whatsoever and be perfectly happy watching it because it has so many beautiful shots of Texas and highways and I love that about the film.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it was actually funny that you would say that that it has beautiful shots of Texas because I think it was your screenwriter John who, when I was sort of before we had shown the movie at Lone Star, and I was like, I don't know how people are going to take this movie, and John was like, don't worry, David. If there's one thing Texans love, it's Texas.
Absolutely true.
So it's funny that you're like, I love that it's from Texas, or I love the Texas of it.
Yeah, definitely. So do you want to go ahead and just give us a plot synopsis, what the movie's about?
Absolutely. So the movie's about a pianist played by Jason London, who some people might remember from Dazed and Confused. And he is a former piano prodigy, so he was a teenage prodigy. And he's now reached middle age, and he's living on his family's farmland. And he's not farming. He's not playing the piano. His wife has just left him, and as the movie opens, he receives divorce papers in the mail and punches his fist into the wall, which is extremely inconvenient because it's also the week that he has agreed to play the annual county piano competition, which is the same competition that he won when he was a teenager that put him on the map. And it's basically a movie about a week in this guy's life in which he's supposed to play this piano competition, but he has a busted up hand.
Would you classify the film as a drama?
I think so, yeah. I think it's a drama with funny moments.
I do feel like it's pretty lighthearted. And one thing that I like about the film is that we don't get into what I feel are melodramatic tropes that I would expect from indie dramas, or that I see a lot in indie dramas, where like the young girl in the movie, Alyssa, I feel like in another movie you might have given her like an alcoholic father, right, that was abusive or whatever, and it feels all very grounded and not like melodramatic to me. Like it doesn't go into that territory.
Sure. I credit Payton for that a lot. His interest is not in melodrama. His interest is not in, histrionics. Like he's really interested in real people and their real problems. Those characters are all coming from a real place. They're not based on individual people, but they are coming from his experience of growing up in Texas. I feel similarly. I mean, like some of my favorite filmmakers are Mike Leigh and Milos Forman. And so to me, like those small character stories, like the whole challenge of this movie is how to give stakes to something that doesn't, no one's dying, right? There's no life or death stakes. There's nobody's falling in love. It's just, life. And how do you make life seem dramatic in a classical sense? Like, normally you have something that amps up the stakes as the movie goes along, and we do that, but we do it in a smaller register, I think, than maybe the average film does.
Yeah, I agree. It's very much like slice of life, very real, and I find that refreshing, particularly at the film festival. I think I just got done seeing, like, when I saw your film for the first time, I just got done seeing like 2 like balls to the wall like crime thrillers where people talk in ways that they don't normally do. So then I saw your film and I was just like, yes. Real life. I loved it.
Yeah, it really captured rural Texas for me, especially like Justin was saying with the images that we were shown. They were really beautiful, and then just kind of the slow pace of life, like everyday life that you were talking about.
Chris and I are from a super small town where we met and spent a lot of our teenage years.
Is this the one that starts with N and is complicated to pronounce?
No, that's where I went to film school.
Okay.
Was Nacogdoches. This is a small town just outside of Fort Worth called Granbury.
Oh, okay, just outside of Fort Worth.
Yeah.
So did you guys know about Van Cliburn as kids?
Yeah, actually. So that was one of the things I kind of had a curiosity because you had put it in there. And I was like, how many people know about Van Cliburn? I guess I don't even know that much about it. Van Cliburn is a thing that happens every 4 years in Fort Worth, correct?
Well, it's named for, that competition is named for a real guy, Van Cliburn. Mm-hmm. And Van Cliburn was a pianist from Texas who actually is from Kilgore, Texas.
Okay, yeah.
And he's famous because in the 50s, when he was a young man, he was an outstanding pianist, and he went to Moscow and he won the international Tchaikovsky competition against the Russians in Moscow at the height of the Cold War. And so he came back to America a hero. He had a ticker tape parade down Broadway. And so he's, he was a really culturally significant person. Like he was on the cover of Time magazine. I think it was Time, or maybe Life, or maybe both. But, certainly a very, very famous person at that time. And since then, his name has kind of faded from the news, and people don't talk about him as much outside of Texas anymore. But certainly in the world of piano, he's not only still well known as a pianist himself, but because there's this international Van Cliburn competition that happens that bears his name, that carries on the knowledge of his work and his legacy.
Yeah, that's what I knew him from, was the competition, and I think it's every 4 years. Is that correct? Do you know?
I'm not going to pretend that I know. I think that sounds right, but I would be lying if I said I knew.
Yeah, I guess it's not that important. It's kind of like the World Cup of soccer or pianist.
It really, but that's the thing. It is really important. So I should know how often it happens. I mean, we tried really hard working on this film because neither Payton nor I are pianists, and so we did really work hard to try to do our research, do our homework, and make sure that if someone who was a pianist watched the movie, that they wouldn't be like, another one of these. Because certainly, when you make a film about a subject that isn't your subject, like, I mean, I don't know how many times you've seen a film about something that you know something about, and you're like, they got it wrong. And so we just wanted to get it right because that seemed that was important to me. I mean, I played piano as a kid. I played for like 7 years growing up. Oh, wow. But I was never very good at it. I loved it, but I was never, I wasn't gifted at that. And so I was always so impressed by people who were gifted in that way. And Russell Reed, who played all the piano parts for the film, is a really wonderful pianist out of Austin. And so he was kind enough to tell me after he finally saw the film, he was like, I know you were worried about getting it right, and I think you did. And I was like, all right, well, thanks, Russell. So it's good. It's better than the opposite, right?
So that makes me so curious. So Peyton, who wrote the script, grew up in Texas, and I think there's a lot of love for Texas that comes through in this film. Like, just we pointed out how great it looks, but you know, it's obviously photographed with love. And what is your connection to Texas? Do you have one? Are you from Texas?
I do. No, I'm not originally from Texas, but my dad moved to Houston when I was still in high school. And so I would go visit him in Houston. And I don't know if it was because I knew him, but that got me interested in going to UT. And I was already, by the time I started thinking about it, I was already at the University of Illinois as an undergrad. So I wound up going to film school at UT for graduate school. So I moved to Austin. And it's kind of weird now, you know, so I made this movie with Jason London in it, but the year I moved to Austin was the year they were filming Dazed and Confused in Austin. And so I had this, you know, weird cycle thing go on with this film where, you know, when I moved to Austin, they were shooting Dazed and Confused. I was there in film school studying to become a filmmaker. I was obsessed with Richard Linklater's Slacker. And then the next year he comes out with this movie, you know, while I'm still in school, starring Jason London, and now flash forward 25 years, and I'm like making a movie with Jason London. So I went to UT for 3 years, graduated in '95, and while I was there, my sister moved to Austin, and then she has stayed there ever since. So when I moved to New York eventually, I was directing music videos, and once I started directing music videos, I would go down to Austin every year to go visit my sister and go to South by Southwest. So I've, you know, over the years between visiting my dad in Houston, I actually lived in Houston for a summer and worked in commercials as a PA, and then going to film school in Texas, and then, you know, going to visit all the time. I had a pretty, you know, good feel for the place. I just, you know, wasn't from there.
So you weren't living in Texas at all whenever you started working on the film, or started?
No, we, It was a thing where Peyton had just finished doing a one-man show. He has this awesome play called The Play About the Coach, in which he plays a basketball coach in the last 4 minutes of a college basketball game. And he had like an off-Broadway run of that in New York. And when the play closed, he was kind of done. Like, he didn't have any other projects cooking. And I was working full-time right then at 48 Hours, which is a show on CBS on Saturday nights. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but because you're under 50. But it's well loved by its audience. And I worked there for about 10 years as an editor, and then eventually as a producer. And so I was there, he was done, and I was like, man, you know, I've been making a lot of music videos at that point. I think I directed 15 music videos. And I was sort of like, I need to do something bigger scale. I need to do something that isn't going to, you know, get 700 views on YouTube and go away. And so I said, well, why don't we make a movie? And Peyton's like, well, great, let's make a movie. What's it about? And I was like, well, here's the thing. And he had written this short script about his grandfather, who was a farmer who lived up near the Red River. This is starting to sound familiar from our movie. And his grandfather was named Jack Ridge. And so he had this short script, but it didn't really have a plot. It was just a guy driving around on a tractor on a farm in Northeast Texas. And then he kind of put it in a drawer. And I was like, remember that script about your grandfather? Yeah, okay, no grandfather. It's not a grandfather. Like, it's somebody our age, somebody who lives on a farm for some reason that we don't know yet, but is like you, like has this, you know, drive and has ambition and has artistic, you know, intent. What is that story? You know, that's my idea for a movie. And it wasn't very fully formed at all. And then so Peyton went away, and he was like, I think I can do something with that. And he came back, and he put together like the farmer, or the pianist with the farmer. He put together, you know, there's these other characters in the town. The first pages he gave to me were that monologue about the pie at the beginning of the film. And so that was like, okay, wow, this is pretty incredible. I'm really interested to know what the rest of this is. Like, I want to see this movie.
So how long did you guys work on the script? I guess from like the time that he went away and started writing to the time that, you know, like, okay, the script is close enough, like we're actually going to make this thing.
We started writing in March of 2013, and we greenlit our own movie in January of 2015. So like almost 2 years, which actually doesn't sound like that much time when I say it. Given that it's now been 5 years, it's kind of crazy that we were that far along that quickly. But in that time, like we had done multiple drafts, we had done, you know, readings with actors. We'd gotten a lot of feedback from people who had made suggestions, and, you know, just trying to get it to a point where we were like, okay, we can't make this story better. This is the story that we want to tell. But that revision process is super important. I mean, I don't know how people who write a script in like, you know, 2 weeks, I think is it Aronofsky who said he wrote Mother in like 8 days?
Really?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that, but
I can't remember how many days. It was some incredible. Or also, there's the story of Taxi Driver. I think was supposedly written in like 6 weeks.
Oh yeah.
I feel like there was drugs involved with that as well.
Yeah. I think you're right.
Maybe with Mother too, because
Mother's
pretty wild.
It's hard to know. But anyway, I mean, listen, I'm not in any way comparing us to Darren Aronofsky or Paul Schrader because clearly those guys are insanely talented and extremely successful. So, you know, please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But as far as how I work, like I couldn't do that is my point. I just, you know, we couldn't have had something that was good enough to shoot in that short space of time.
So what about the idea like really grabbed you, since it wasn't, you know, it wasn't your story, there was
Right.
another screenwriter, like what about the story or the script like really got you interested, or what was your hook for it?
Well, for me, the hook really was this story of a guy who came out of the gate hot and then cooled off as life passed him by. Because, I mean, not that I was literally having that experience, but, you know, I was really young when I went to film school. I had huge ambition. I was extremely cocky. And, you know, it's not that I didn't get to do any of the things that I planned to do, but they certainly didn't happen the way that I had imagined them in my, you know, my years going into film school and then being in film school. I mean, I think I was imagining more of a career like Steven Soderbergh or, you know, somebody like that, because that's who you had to look up to, right? Those were I mean, it's like the people who, or, you know, if you go even further back, you think about Orson Welles directing Citizen Kane when he was like, he was 26, 27? I can't remember how old he was, but it was insane.
mid-20s for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I literally was 30 years old before I realized, like, I will never be a 26-year-old wunderkind. Like, I was like, oh, wait, that's not going to happen. I mean, so I got into film school when I was 20 years old, which is unusual. Like, not a lot of people got to go do MFAs at UT at my age. And so I kind of had this idea that I was going to be something that I'm not, right? And I think that's what Jack does. And so I related to that. I was like, okay, I understand this character. I get where he's coming from. And as an adult, like as a, you know, I'm older than you guys for sure. There's a certain sadness of middle age that's like, it's not like I give up on life kind of sadness, but it's just like, wow, life is more complicated, and it's you know, it has its highs, but it also certainly has its lows. And I felt like this was a character who had been laid low in a way. And I was interested in letting that, you know, in telling that story in a way that felt fresh, at least to me, you know, that didn't, and I also really loved the collision of high and low culture in the script, where you've got, you know, classic Texas tropes like this, you know, pie competition, or just the church being the center of the town, or any of the various pickup trucks driving everywhere and cornfields and all this stuff. And then this classical pianist plonked in the middle of it, because that's not what people think of when they think of Texas. And I've been sort of interested in the ways in which Texas can surprise you since I first flew to Houston, because, you know, before my dad moved there, I'd never been to Texas. And I imagined Texas as being kind of like the desert that Harry Dean Stanton walks across in Paris, Texas.
Right.
Like, I just imagined like Big Bend, and, you know, that was my vision of Texas, or like the Searchers or something like that.
Yeah. I spent summers in Pennsylvania, and I went to school my freshman year in Pennsylvania. And when I met like the kids in high school there, like they all like legitimately asked if we rode like horses to school.
Fair.
And
I mean,
instead
it's
of like
crazy,
cars,
but
it's weird the perception that people have of it.
Absolutely. So the first time I flew to Houston, we come down out of the clouds, and all I can see, as far as I can see in any direction, are green lawns, green trees, and swimming pools. And you're like, wait, what state is this? This is not what I thought it was going to be. And so I feel like the classical music thing is also something that's not part of the popular imagination of Texas, but Texas is huge on classical music. Like, you know, Rice has an amazing piano conservatory, and there's this place called Festival Hill that's sort of halfway between Houston and Austin that has an insanely great summer music series with, like, you know, world-class musicians coming in from all over to perform in this bohemian wooden concert hall that's been constructed in the middle of nowhere.
That was actually one of the things that I really appreciated about this film, because in any other film or somebody that doesn't know Texas as well as the two of you, it would have been a football star, right? It would have been an old, burnt-out football star that had made it into the NFL or something, and he came back. But as opposed, this is a piano player that's different. That, you know, does that make sense?
Absolutely. No,
yeah,
I mean,
and that's one of the things I really appreciated about the film.
Thank you. I mean, that's something I appreciate about it, so I'm super glad to hear that other people appreciate it as well.
When you were getting ready to make the film and writing it, were there any particular film or like TV influences that you looked at or were thinking about? For sure.
So, I mean, Peyton and I talked a lot about Tender Mercies. I don't know if you've ever seen that with Robert Duvall, but, you know, Duvall plays a kind of broken down country singer, and he winds up in a motel that's run by Tess Harper. And it's just a movie about this guy who's really just reached the absolute bottom. And how does he find his way back to a semi-normal life? And there's a really great performance by a kid in the movie who's the actor's name escapes me at the moment. But that's just a really good film about, you know, sort of semi-rural Texas. But it's a country music film, not a classical music film. So, but that was a model for us. We thought a lot about this movie called The Station Agent. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, with
Peter Dinklage?
Peter Dinklage,
Is in that one? I haven't seen it, but I know of it.
Yeah, it's Peter Dinklage, it's Bobby Cannavale, it's Patricia Clarkson, and it's directed by Tom McCarthy, who went on to make Spotlight. It's a movie that's set in a semi-rural place. It's this guy played by Dinklage who inherits a train station. So, you know, he goes out to live this place, and he's kind of looking for solitude. He's not interested in people. He's a hermit or a misanthrope. And then over the course of the movie, he's like kind of forced to make friends. And that movie was super important for us as a structural influence.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned Tender Mercies. I thought that was a really great film. And this is kind of a side note, but the performance by the kid is so great because Robert Duvall was actually teaching him to play guitar. The actor actually grew up to be a guitar teacher. Because of that performance and what he went through during that movie. I thought that was really awesome.
Okay. Do you want to talk about getting the project off the ground? Like as much as you want to go into anything you don't feel like talking about, but like as far as, you know, getting funding or anything like that?
Well, we were super lucky because, you know, one of the other people that we knew in that group of people who had Texas connections was our friend Justin, and he's done well for himself as an artist. And so we did like a research trip. Peyton and I went to Texas. We did some scouting. We did some interviews. We researched, like we went to meet this guy, James Dick, who is the head of Festival Hill. He's a pianist who also won the International Tchaikovsky competition. It was it was a fascinating research trip. Anyway, so we come back from this thing. We've got all these stills. This is how I made a lookbook, which do you guys know what a lookbook looks like?
I do, but go ahead and explain it for anybody listening who doesn't.
Sure. So it's basically just like a way to convey the feel of a film without having shot it yet. So we had a ton of stills, and we just kind of put them together and put some of the dialogue from the script over the top as you know, just like layers of images. So we came back and we did all this stuff. It was, you know, basically pre-production essentially, but we didn't have any money. And, at a certain point, Justin was like, you guys are serious. You're making this movie. And we were like, yeah. And he goes, all right, well, I'm going to help you. And so he was our first investor. And he didn't provide the entire budget, but he provided enough of a budget that we could have made a very low budget version of this movie where I would have been not only the director, but also the cinematographer. And we would have had to hire no-name actors, basically make the film ourselves. But so we didn't have to make it that way, because what happened was once we got this first investment, the ball started rolling, and then other people kind of who knew we'd been doing all this work kind of came forward and were like, well, we'd like to help too. And so, honestly, we looked into like the idea of trying to solicit investment, but there's all kinds of legal problems with that, where you have to register with the SEC, and you can only accept investment from what are called registered investors or accredited investors. I can't remember what the word is, but there's some word that's like basically people who can afford to lose the money.
Right. My film professor always told us that like the bare minimum of like net worth of someone you can get money from is like $1 million. I don't know if that's still
right.
true.
I don't know. It sounds right, though. I mean, the long story short was that we looked into it and we were just like, that's too complicated. We don't know how to do that. And we also didn't have a lawyer who could do it for us. So we just sort of proceeded with this kind of word of mouth thing going for a couple months. And at a certain point, we just were like, okay, we're greenlighting ourselves. We are going to make this movie. And then once we greenlit ourselves, then even more money came. And so by the end of it, I think, we had like 3 times as much money as we started with. It was still a very tight budget.
So where did Jason London come in all this? At what point during all of the process did you get him on board?
Relatively late. So we had greenlit ourselves. We had a DP attached to the movie who I'd gone to grad school with. And at the end, he had a scheduling conflict, and so he couldn't do it. But in the middle, because he was going to be shooting the film, he connected us to a whole bunch of people in Austin. And through one of them, we wound up getting connected to our casting director. And so we hired a casting director for the movie, which, is not something that I would have originally thought I needed to do. I was thinking, we put an ad in whatever place that people know to go look for ads. And it turned out that we have a casting director named Vicky Boone, and having a casting director was the single best decision that we made making this movie, because Vicky is super smart. She did she cast all the kids that were in Tree of Life. If you ever saw Tree of Life.
Yeah, definitely.
And she cast the ensemble for Everybody Wants Some. So she had a lot of experience working, on decent sized films with amazing filmmakers. So she's pretty smart. And she also knows all the actors in Austin. Basically, she knows all the actors in like a 500-mile radius. And she was also willing, thankfully for us, to put the breakdown for the characters out, not only to Austin and the surrounds, but also to LA and New York. And so we saw like probably 40 different people for the Jack Ridge part. A lot of people who were both pianists and actors. And then I think through that process, somehow Jason got his hands on the script and saw it and read it and was like, I want to do this. And so he contacted Vicky, or his people contacted Vicky. Somebody contacted Vicky, and she was like, Jason London is interested. And I really had no idea if he was right for it, if he could do it. I had no idea. The last thing I had seen him in was, years before. I couldn't even necessarily say exactly what the last thing was.
Was he in Out Cold, or was that Jeremy London?
He was in Out Cold. Yeah, he's in Out Cold. He's in Carrie the Rage, or Carrie to the Rage.
Okay.
He works all the time. He's in a ton of stuff. He was on Dallas, the TV show, I think. Jason, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry if I got that wrong. He does a ton of features too, but I just hadn't seen any of them recently, so I wasn't sure. And so they said, well, let's have a phone call with him. And he called me, or I called him. I can't remember how we got on the phone, but I talked to him from my house for like an hour, and it was like instantaneous. As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, oh, wow, his voice sounds like that? That's amazing. Because his voice in the movie is his real voice. Like, he really has that accent. And as soon as I heard the accent, I was like, this is interesting. And then he just told me, like, the town in the movie is the town he grew up in Oklahoma. He's like, I know these people. I know this guy. he was in a movie. His first movie was called Man in the Moon with Reese Witherspoon. And I think he was 15 years old. It's directed by Robert Mulligan, who made To Kill a Mockingbird. And, you know, it's his first movie. It's Reese's first movie. And he still looks back on that movie, I think, really fondly. And I think this script kind of reminded him of that world a little bit, of that time. And I don't know, he was extremely persuasive when I talked to him on the phone. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you really do want to do it, and you really do understand it. And he understood the script. Like, other people who read the script didn't totally get it, but he got it all. Like, it was really fascinating just listening to him talk about the character, because he really understood it. And I feel like you can tell that by watching the movie. Like, he is this guy. And I don't know, without Jason, I don't know if there's a movie. Like, I'm imagining the movie with someone else in it, and I'm like, I don't know if I would want to watch that.
Yeah, he's really great in it. And
yeah, it's surprising. Like, you know, I've never directed a movie before, and people keep telling me like, oh, the acting in your movie is really great. And I'm like, well, that's because the actors in my movie are really great. You know, it's not necessarily anything to do with me per se. I think it's more just that they were really good at it.
Yeah, so my favorite performance in the movie, my favorite character is the girl that we talked about earlier. Is it Jasmine or Yasmin or Jasmine?
It's Jasmine.
Jasmine.
Yeah, it's Jasmine.
Okay, I'm trying to be way too fancy with it, apparently. But Jasmine Skloss Harrison, who plays Alyssa, I think she is incredible in it. And I got to meet her at the Lone Star Festival screening, the one in Fort Worth.
Oh, sure.
She was the first person I went up to, I think even before I came up to you, and I was like, hey, you are incredible in this. And so tell me about how you found her, and does she do like a lot of acting?
No, so we found her through Vicky. Vicky brought her in for an in-person audition, and she does not do a ton of acting. She had been in, I think, one short film before our film, and has never been in a feature before. But she had this incredible advantage, which was that her mother is a filmmaker in Austin who made a film that showed on PBS called Sunshine, I believe. I think it's called Sunshine. But it's a movie about her and her kid and her life. And Jasmine is in it, like, on camera, and it aired on PBS nationally, you know, when she was like, I don't know, 8 years old, something like that. I could get the details wrong because I haven't seen the film. But I feel like having had that experience of growing up around someone who was filming her has to have helped, because she's so natural in front of a camera. I mean, either that or she's just incredibly natural in front of a camera and has nothing to do with her mom. But I'd like to credit her mom, because she's just a really naturally warm-hearted, kind, open person. And that came across really well, I thought, in her performance. I mean, she just is right there for the camera. And there's not a lot of people who can be available to the camera like that. You know, most of us, myself included, kind of clam up when you point a camera at us, or our faces do weird things, or we just, it's not a good fit.
Yeah. Or you spend the whole time thinking about what your face is doing.
Right. But Jasmine is so natural. She's just not like that. And it was really fascinating to work with her and Jason in all those scenes together, because they're so different, both as people and as actors. And Jason is, you know, really seasoned, really experienced, a veteran. Every take was interesting, but he tended to get better and better as the scene got going. And Jasmine was kind of the other way, where like her first take would be perfect, but if we screwed up the focus or if we didn't, you know, whatever, and every time she did it, it was still good, but like you could feel that the energy was like dissipating as opposed to building. And so a lot of the film is like take 2 or take 3, because that was where the two of them met in the middle. So yeah, it was really, man, I look back on it now and I'm just like, God, that was fun. It was so fun. And at the time, I had a million things on my mind, and I think I was really stressed out. And I'm not sure if my crew would have thought that I was having fun, but looking back on it, it was a lot of fun.
Are there any like fun stories or stories of like difficult challenges or difficult things that came up during filming that you want to tell?
Oh man, so many. I mean, so many things happen, right? When you're making a movie, you know this, but it's really. It's just every day is something different, right? So the month before we filmed the movie, it was raining torrentially in Texas, specifically in Austin. It would not stop raining. It was raining every single day. And, it was like the kind of rain where it's so hard that it bounces off the ground and like you see the raindrops like popping back up like a foot in the air. Mm-hmm. Like it was just like coming down. And we're like, this is a movie that takes place outdoors for the most part. And if it doesn't stop raining, we're not going to get to film this movie. Like, what are we going to do? What is going to, could something, it's supposed to be summer in Texas. Like I've been in summer in Texas and it's hot and dry. It's not raining. And it just wouldn't stop, and it wouldn't stop, and it wouldn't stop. So by the time we started filming, it finally stopped. But that meant that the ground around the house was just really muddy and soft. And so we have this Winnebago that is our combo actor refuge and makeup area. Because again, you're shooting in June in Texas and it's hot. It's so, again, I don't have to tell you guys how hot Texas is in the summer, but it's really, really hot. And it's also muggy. And so keeping the actors from just being drenched in sweat all the time is like a full-time job. And so we had a Winnebago, and I think at least 3 times the Winnebago got stuck in the mud, and we had to get a pickup truck to tow the Winnebago just to get it back onto the road so that we could like drive it home at the end of the day.
So once you wrapped the movie, how long did you spend on editing? You said you edited it yourself, right?
I did. So I came home. Actually, this is kind of funny. I don't know how funny you'll think it is, but I thought it was funny. We didn't have any sound tap on the camera. So we were recording all the sound on a Zoom recorder. Nikki Dangle, who's our production sound mixer, was booming the movie herself. She had the Zoom on her belt, and she would record all the sound onto the Zoom. So I had all the footage, I had all the sound, but I had never synced any of it while we were shooting. Like there was no time to do that. And I didn't have any money for an assistant editor, so I was my own assistant editor. So I didn't actually know that we had all the picture and all the sound for the entire movie until 6 weeks after we wrapped, because that's how long it took me to get home, transcode all the 4K footage into something that my computer didn't spit out, and then find all the audio, and then go through and manually, because we used a clap slate, we didn't even have a timecode slate, so then I had manually slate and sync 20 days worth of footage, which took me more than 20 days.
Oof, yeah.
So by the end of it, I was like, oh, we have a movie and we're only missing sound for like one scene.
Nice.
That's amazing.
That's not bad.
I thought it was incredible.
Yeah. And by no sound tap on the camera, you just mean that the camera basically recorded no audio.
Exactly.
It was just the video, right?
It was just dead silent. It was like an old-fashioned film shoot where you have your sound on the Nagra and your picture goes to film, and then you send the film off to the lab and get it developed, and then you have to sync everything later. It was like the old days.
Yeah. So any of those like audio programs that you can buy that'll automatically sync your footage based on the waves from like your video file, you did not have that luxury.
Yeah, I did not have that luxury because hang on one second.
Sure.
The room I'm in is getting cleaned right now.
Oh.
Okay. And now they're done. They just came to check the garbage.
Okay.
As I said, I am calling you from work, so that's I have another job. Actually, no. Today my job was being a director, so that was pretty good. It's a pretty good day when you get to be the director. It's actually kind of like the best, right? It's like I think the challenge is to not fall prey to thinking that just because you're in charge that you know more than other people do. Because one of the things that I loved about this process was working with smart people who know things that I don't know. I was going to shoot this movie myself, but as it turns out, Daniel Zollinger, who's the cinematographer, knows way more about being a cinematographer than I do, and he did a great job. Jason knows way more about acting than I do, and he did a great job. There's any number of people on this film who did fantastic work. Casting, Vicky Boone did an incredible job for me that I didn't even know I wanted done.
Yeah, you always want to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you.
Yep. Absolutely. And that was really fun for me, was just to like get to enjoy the fruits of their labor.
Back to the editing, you said it took you 6 weeks just to like sync the footage. How long did it take you to get through to like your first finished cut?
Actually, probably not that long. I mean, I've been a professional editor for TV for like 12 years at that point, maybe a little bit more. So I'm pretty fast. I mean, it probably wasn't more than a couple of weeks before I had a full cut, maybe even less than that. I can't remember, to be perfectly honest. I know when I edited a feature the last time for another director, I think it was like a week for me to put together a string, like a first assembly.
Sure.
But before, I mean, like to get to the point where we had a cut that we were comfortable showing to other people, that was several months. I mean, I think our first test screening was in October. So I started editing, I started syncing when I got back in July. And so August, September, and then by October, we had like a version of the movie that was working. Although I will say a version of the movie that still needed significant revision, because then we did another test screening in November, and I think I finally locked picture right before Christmas.
Cool. That's pretty fast, actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were very optimistic about our festival chances. And so I didn't want to miss the whole season. Like we missed Sundance, like we weren't going to be able to apply to Sundance, but I still wanted to apply to some other, some of these big festivals. We were actually we were lucky in some ways and unlucky in others. We were very fortunate to premiere at Montreal, and we wound up getting, through a series of misadventures that I'm not even sure we have time to go into. We wound up getting the 7:00 Saturday night first week of the festival slot.
Nice.
At Montreal, which was kind of an amazing experience because Jasmine was there, her mom was there, Jason came up for that. So we're presenting this movie in a theater with French subtitles to a Francophone audience, and then, going up to do a Q&A on stage with like 400, French ladies and men in the audience. It was hilarious. It was an amazing experience. Like this moment where Peyton was like explaining about Van Cliburn and his mother and the small town of Wyndham, and this lady in the audience yells out, "En français, s'il vous plaît!" And so I had to like try to translate for him into French, which is not my main skill in life.
No, do you speak French?
Un peu, right? Un petit peu, un très petit peu. So yeah, not very much, very little, very, very little.
Do you want to talk about any other festivals that you were in, or and what awards you won at different festivals?
Well, we've already talked about Lone Star, where we won a festival. We won an award for Best Texas Film. We were defeated for the audience award at that festival. I don't know if you've heard of the film that won the audience award at the Lone Star Film Festival. It's called Camino.
I've heard of it.
The audience really, really liked that one. So we won Best Texas. Actually, we have been milking winning Best Texas Film at the Lone Star Film Festival for the last 18 months because that looks really good when you say Best Texas Film.
Yeah.
We did mostly a smaller series of festivals. We played a festival that's really good in Seattle it has an interesting name. It's called the Local Sightings Festival, which sounds like it would not be a great festival because it's so small, but in the same time, it actually is a really wonderful collection of films and filmmakers. They're probably listening to this going, "Dude, why are you insulting our festival?" But I really liked being in that one. And that's here in Seattle where I live. And we had an amazing screening there. We also played, as you were saying, Hill Country before. We won a Best Actor award at Hill Country for Jason. And we were at Durango in Colorado. That was really fun.
Yeah, so you've been all over the country showing them.
We have. And then after festivals, we then did our own theatrical tour with the film where we went to 10 cities, Chicago, Madison, New York, Los Angeles, Paris, Texas, which is the closest big town to where Peyton's grandparents are from. Oh, we played the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana, which is where I went to undergrad. And that was kind of awesome because I had not been back there since I graduated. And so to go there and show the movie to an auditorium of 75 people was pretty sweet. I really enjoyed that. And they were such a great audience. Like they had, great questions. They're college kids. And so I wasn't sure how college kids would respond to this movie, but the answer is really, really well.
Especially college kids from Illinois.
Yeah, especially college kids from Illinois. There was this one kid came up to me afterwards in the Q&A line, And he's like, yeah, I don't really normally go for like intellectual movies. Like I'm more of like a Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of guy, but this story was really intoxicating. And I was like, intoxicating? Pff, nice. Okay. Intoxicating. I'll take it. That's a good one.
Yeah. Where can people watch the film? Where is it available?
It is available on Amazon. It is available on DVD, Blu-ray, and also streaming on Amazon. It's also available on iTunes. It's available on Google Play. It's available on Fandango now, Vudu. You know, if you know how to stream movies on demand, you can probably. Oh, it's on DirecTV. Yeah, I mean it's all over the place. Basically, we were fortunate to get a deal with our distribution company Gravitas Ventures, and so Gravitas has existing relationships with all of those places. And so when they put the movie through their pipeline, it comes out on the other side in all kinds of crazy, interesting spots. If you want to find those spots, the best way to do it is to go to our website, asfarasmovie.com, just www.asfarasmovie.com. And I have links there to all of the places where you can stream the film. Or if you prefer to watch a Blu-ray, which I highly recommend, you can purchase one. And they are on sale right now on Amazon, I think for like $11 or something crazy.
That's not bad. I mean, most people probably haven't seen the movie, so it's going to be a blind buy. But I think, $11 for a blind buy, that's not bad at all.
No, and we three here are here to tell them that it's worth doing. So
yeah, and that'll lead us actually into what we like to do, at least with the one other time so far in this podcast history that we've interviewed a filmmaker. We like to, each of us, you included, if you'd like, pick
Sure.
a film that is similar to your movie, or that we think, like, if you like, X film, you should check out as far as the eye can see. So we'll go first. So Chris, do you want to start us?
Yeah, my pick is Dancer, Texas. Population, I think it's 94. Dancer, Texas is what I call it. But it's about a group of high school kids. There's only 4 kids in the high school, and they're graduating, and they're all have a plan to leave this small town. And throughout the weekend, some of them decide not to, and some of them decide to. But it really captures the small town, just like your film does. It really gives you an idea of what it's like to live in a small town in Texas, and I think your film really captures that well as well. So
that's fantastic. That's one I haven't seen, so I will take that as a recommendation.
Oh, check it out. You should.
Okay, so for me, the film that I thought of the most, it's directed by Bob Rafelson, and it's a 1970 film called 5 Easy Pieces with Jack Nicholson.
I know it well.
Yeah. So it's been a while since I've seen it, but what I remember that there's a small town. There's this guy who actually used to be a piano prodigy, and that is played by Jack Nicholson. But there's this very indie vibe to that film, and there's obviously like the piano prodigy comparison. And it was made in that like early independent movement in like 70s cinema that I really love. And there's some of the movies that made me like fall in love with like independent film were from that time, when I first started getting into movies. So yeah, I think that's like kind of a almost maybe a little too perfect comparison to your film.
No, I think it's a great film. I think we looked at that film very carefully as we were making the film, because we're like, okay, so it starts, at least the first, section of the movie. I won't give away the rest of it, but the first section of the movie takes place in Texas. He's a pianist. There's certainly a lot of parallels there. And yeah, I'll just say that first of all, it's a very flattering comparison. So I appreciate that. I mean, it's an amazing film. So,
yeah, absolutely. It's very good. It's one I've been wanting to watch again forever. I actually got it as part of the Criterion. Are you familiar with Criterion Collection?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a silly question for like a film dude, but
it's not a silly question, but yeah, I've had Criterion stuff since I'm trying to think when they first started doing DVDs. I don't know. I have the Brazil Criterion with the 3 versions.
Yeah, I have that one too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Criterion is awesome.
Yeah. So I saw 5 Easy Pieces as part of the America Lost and Found BBS box set that they did.
Okay.
And,
so I'm familiar with Criterion. I am not familiar with that box set.
Yeah, it's got like Easy Rider and all the stuff that they did. The studio that was Bob Rafelson, and Jack Nicholson was a big part of that too. He's in a lot of the films and directed some of the films in it, but Five Easy Pieces is one of them, and it's great. And I bought the Blu-ray of that box set, and I've been meaning to watch that again forever, because I think when I first watched it, it was on DVD.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film.
Cool.
Okay, so my film, I was just trying to rack my brain to think of a film that people would have seen, because obviously if you say, if you've seen this, then you'll like our film. So I was trying to think of a film that was substantially similar and that people had seen. So I don't want people to think I think my movie is as good as this one, but a film that came to mind for me was Boyhood. Which, have you guys seen Boyhood?
I have, yes.
Okay, so it's set in Texas. It does something similar to our film in the sense that it takes the small parts of life and makes them the whole story, as opposed to, nobody gets murdered in Boyhood. Spoiler alert.
Right, that's kind of a very Linklater thing to do when he's not making more mainstream stuff like the School of Rock, or was it the Newton Boys?
Newton Boys. Yeah, I know somebody dies in the Newton Boys. That's true. But nobody dies that I can remember in Boyhood. I shouldn't say that so confidently.
Right. But right. I guess his lesser movies like Boyhood, they really focus on like the real life experiences and the lack of melodrama. Right.
Yeah. And so that was something that I was like, okay, if you have the patience, because also Boyhood is a slower movie. It doesn't, it's not whiz bang. There's no car crashes. So if you have the patience for Boyhood and you find that to be compelling, then I feel like you might have, the right temperament to enjoy our film.
Very cool. So we mostly do like movie news and reviews and stuff, but I think a lot of people who are into films also have like that dream of making a film someday or being a filmmaker. So do you have any advice for any aspiring filmmakers? Like your best piece of advice, maybe?
Well, okay. So the very best piece of advice was already given by the filmmakers of Bear With Us, because they gave the advice that when someone tells you what they think is wrong with your script, you should listen to them. And I think that was such good advice, and it's better advice than I have to give otherwise. So that's my best piece of advice was already, I'm stealing from the Bear With Us guys. But, my biggest thing would be to know what it is that you're making a movie about, right? Do your research, because that really helped us to make a better film. And it helped me to be really proud of the response the response to this film from farmers, the response to this film from musicians has been, and also from Texans, has been even better than the response from just the average person. And so, I feel really good about having made sure to, reach out to the people that we're trying to tell their story and feel like we can, authentically say that we really tried to tell a story for a group of people who would appreciate it. Make sure, because film is a collaborative medium behind the camera, but it's also a collaboration between the filmmakers and the audience. And if you haven't considered how an audience is going to watch your film, I think you're missing an opportunity. I know some people don't, feel like they don't want to do test screenings because they don't want to change things. But I think if you know that an audience is responding the way you thought they were going to respond, then great, don't change it, even if they don't like it. Like Mother, right? People apparently didn't like that film because I haven't seen it, but a lot of people didn't like it. And he's like, I don't care, because this is the movie I wanted to make. And I think that's great. I'm actually kind of looking forward to seeing Mother for that reason. But I think if you literally don't care what an audience thinks of your film, then why did you make a film? You could have just written something in a notebook and kept it at your house.
Very cool. That's all amazing advice, in my opinion.
Cool. Well, listen, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys having me on. I hope this is entertaining for people listening at home, informational, informative, whatever. And again, I will say, please visit us at asfarazmovie.com. And if you need to reach me, just click the email button at the bottom of that, and you can get me. You can also find me. I'm at Artisanal Television on Twitter. Or Artisanal TV, I think, on Twitter. And we also have a Twitter for the movie that's at As Far As Movie on Twitter. And As Far As the I Can See _movie on Instagram.
Cool. I hope they have a pen and paper and wrote all that down.
We can link to some of that in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put links to those things all in the show notes.
They can rewind.
Yeah.
Be kind, rewind.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for doing this. It's been fun.
Oh yeah, no, it's my pleasure. And please keep going with the show. I mean, like I listened to your Walkabout episode, and that was fascinating. I loved listening to you guys kind of struggle a little bit with that film, because I think it's a really challenging movie. I have not yet brought myself to listen to the 120 Days of Sallow episode because I haven't seen the film. But listening to the Walkabout was super entertaining.
All right. Well, thanks, David. We'll let you go, and yeah, it was fun.
Okay.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
All right, bye.
All right. So that was our interview with David Franklin.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to thank you very much for coming on, David, and we enjoyed the conversation. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed having it.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, thanks Jake Wagner Russell for creating our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch. So if you want to follow along with what we're watching next, let us know what you think about the movies we've watched, and maybe if you see As Far as the Eye Can See, shoot a tweet at us and let us know that you've seen it and what you thought about the film. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at casualcinecast. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/casualcinecast, where we talk about film and other TV stuff. If you want to email us directly, you can do so at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And lastly, go check out As Far as the Eye Can See. Rent it.
Absolutely. It's totally worth the $4.99 to rent it. He said that it was only $11.99 to buy it, it's a great blind buy. Support your local independent cinema. Or maybe not local.
Or you're not local. I don't know where you're from.
Independent cinema in general. Let's support it.
Yeah. No matter where it's from, support it.
Yeah. So thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.